The first thing they felt wasn't fear. It was the cold. A cold that seeps into your bones, into your very soul. Hollow hallways, empty classrooms, whispers that shouldn't exist. Somewhere deep inside abandoned schools, something waits, something that hungers. Sarah Thompson came searching for answers. Clara Bennett came back to teach, but neither of them realized. The schools don't just remember, they consume. The laughter, the whispers, the shadows, they are alive. And now, they have found new voices. Are you ready to step inside, where the schools never sleep and the hunger never ends? Story 1. The first thing Sarah Thompson felt was the cold. Not the crisp autumn chill of the outside air, but a deep, bone-penetrating freeze that seemed to emanate from the very walls of Holloway Academy. She stood frozen in the grand, empty hallway, her flashlight beam trembling in her hand, illuminating dust motes dancing in the stagnant air. The heavy oak door behind her had creaked shut with a finality that felt like a tomb ceiling. And then the laughter began. It wasn't the high, nervous giggle of children. It was low, wet, and multiplied. A chorus of voices rising from the shadows at the end of the corridor. Shh. Like rats scuttling over stone. Sarah's breath hitched. She'd read the reports, heard the local legends. Holloway Academy had burned to the ground in 1957, a tragedy that claimed the lives of 27 students and 3 teachers. But the official records were sparse, contradictory, and the town's elders, when pressed, would only mutter about things that shouldn't be disturbed and hurry away. That's why Sarah, a journalist chasing a career-defining exposé, had come to uncover the truth, to prove the haunted stories were just that, stories. She forced her legs to move, her boots echoing loudly on the worn marble floor. The laughter intensified, swirling around her, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere. Click, click, click. The sound of small, bare feet pattering against the floor. Sarah spun, her flashlight beam slicing through the gloom. Nothing, just empty hallway, peeling paint, and the oppressive silence that immediately swallowed the sound. "Show yourself," Sarah called, her voice sounding thin and reedy in the vast space. "I'm not afraid of ghosts." A door slammed somewhere distant, then another, and another. The sound ricocheted, creating a cacophony of closing doors that seemed to chase her. She pressed forward, her flashlight beam sweeping over faded murals of scholars and scientists, now obscured by grime and time. She found the old administrative wing. Desks sat overturned, papers scattered like fallen leaves. And on one desk, propped against a cracked globe, was a single, yellowed photograph. It showed a group of children, smiling brightly in their school uniforms. Sarah picked it up, her fingers brushing the surface. The image was crisp, almost vibrant compared to the decay around it. But as she held it, a chill worse than before shot through her. The smiles on the children's faces seemed to twist, eyes widening in silent terror. She dropped the photo. It landed face up. The terror was gone. The smiles were back. But now, Sarah noticed something she hadn't before. All the children in the photo were wearing the same unusual, slightly too large uniforms. And one boy, standing slightly apart, had a faint smudged stain on his collar. Dark red, like old ink, or blood. A low moan echoed from the stairwell. Sarah turned, heart hammering against her ribs. She didn't see anything, but the air grew thicker, heavier, like wading through syrup. The temperature plummeted. Her breath plumed in the beam of her flashlight. She heard whispers now, not in English, but in a guttural, indecipherable language that seemed to scrape against her eardrums. Z, kak. She stumbled toward the stairwell, needing to get upstairs, to the library where she'd planned to start her research. The steps groaned under her weight. Halfway up, she paused. The whispers had stopped, replaced by a single, clear voice. A girl's voice. Young, terrified. "He's coming. He's coming for us." Sarah froze. The voice came from directly above her. She shone her light up the stairs. Nothing, just shadows. "Don't let him see you," the voice whispered. "Urgent now. Hide. Please, hide." The plea was so real, so desperate, that Sarah's investigative skepticism crumbled. She scrambled up the remaining steps, pushing open the heavy library door. The room was vast, filled with towering bookshelves that reached the high, vaulted ceiling. Dust hung in the air like smoke. Sarah moved quickly, her flashlight beam darting over card catalogs and empty desks. She found a section labeled Local History and began pulling books. As she handled a thick volume titled Holloway Academy, 1912-1960, the whispers returned, louder now, swirling around the shelves. Zzz-ka-ka-ka, zzz-ka-ka-ka. The air crackled with static. Sarah's flashlight flickered. She opened the book. The pages were brittle. She flipped past photographs of happy students, past articles about school plays and sports days. Then she found it. A small, folded section of newspaper, tucked between the pages. The headline screamed, "Fire ravages Holloway Academy. 27 killed." The article described the fire as accidental, starting in the old boiler room. But the subheading caught her eye. Investigations ongoing. Concerns raised about experimental activities in Science Wing. Experimental activities? What kind? Before she could read further, a cold hand gripped her shoulder. Sarah whirled around. No one was there, but the handprint on her shoulder was icy. She spun back to the book. The folded newspaper section was gone. In its place, something, had scrawled in thick red ink. He knows. The ink was wet, fresh. Panic surged. She had to get out, now. She turned to run, but the library door was gone. Where it had been was a solid wall of books. She slammed her fists against it. Thud, thud, thud. "He's here," the girl's voice whispered, right behind her. Sarah spun. The girl from the photo was standing 3 feet away. She was maybe 10 years old, pale as chalk, her eyes wide and black, like voids. Her uniform was pristine, but her mouth was open in a silent scream. "Run," the girl mouthed, her lips moving soundlessly. Before Sarah could react, the girl dissolved into smoke. The whispers became a roar. Zzz-kak began to shake, then fall. Dust and debris rained down. The temperature dropped again, so sharply Sarah's teeth chattered. She backed into a corner, her flashlight beam shaking violently. Shadows detached themselves from the bookshelves, coalescing into shapes. Children, but distorted, their features blurred, their mouths stretched into grotesque grins. They advanced, not walking, but flowing like smoke, filling the space around her. "He feeds on fear," the girl's voice echoed in her mind, not whispered, but inside her skull. "He needs it. He needs you." A shadow detached itself from the group. It was taller, thinner, wearing a tattered teacher's robe. Its face was featureless, a smooth gray oval. It moved with a jerky, unnatural gait. The fire was never an accident. The girl's voice hissed. He started it, to hide what he'd done, to hide what he is. The robed figure stopped before Sarah. It raised a thin, cold hand. "He is the school," the girl whispered. "He is the hunger. He is the never sleeping." The figure's hand shot out. Sarah screamed as icy fingers closed around her throat. She was lifted off the ground, her flashlight clattering to the floor, its beams sweeping wildly across the room. In that fleeting light, she saw the truth etched onto the robed figure's featureless face. Not a face at all, but a swirling vortex of darkness. And within that vortex, for a split second, she saw eyes, her own eyes. The last thing Sarah felt was the roar of the fire, not in her ears, but in her chest. The hunger, the need, the eternal waking darkness. Then, silence. The flashlight beam died. In the pitch blackness of the Holloway Academy library, the whispers began again. "Zaw, ka, ka, ka." And somewhere, deep within the school's ancient walls, a new voice joined the chorus. A voice that was once Sarah Thompson's. He's coming for us." The school never sleeps. It only hungers, and it has found a new voice to sing its song. Story 2. The first thing Clara Bennett felt was the silence. Not the peaceful quiet of a Sunday morning, but a hollow silence, thick and heavy, pressing against her eardrums like cotton wool. She stood in the cavernous entrance hall of Blackwood High, her keys jingling nervously in her hand. The air smelled of damp plaster and something else, old paper and faint, sweet decay. She was back, after 20 years. Back to teach history, back to the place where she'd spent her formative years. But the school felt wrong, different. The sunlight streaming through the high windows didn't seem to reach the far corners, which remained in perpetual shadow. And the silence, it watched. "Hello?" Clara called out, her voice sounding small and reedy in the vast space. No echo answered, just that oppressive quiet. She pushed open the heavy door to her classroom, room 207. Dust motes danced in the single beam of light from her desk lamp. The room was exactly as she remembered, the same chipped green chalkboard, the same rows of worn wooden desks. But as she laid her bag down, a cold spot bloomed suddenly beneath her left hand. She jerked it back as if burned. The air around the desk felt thin, icy. A shiver ran down her spine. Later, during her first period, the silence in the hallway between classes was broken not by the usual clatter of lockers or shouts of teenagers, but by a low, persistent droning sound. It vibrated in her teeth. It came from the old science wing, now unused. Curiosity overrode caution. She followed the sound down the empty corridor, her heels clicking too loudly on the linoleum. The droning grew louder, deeper, almost like a bumblebee trapped behind the walls. She pushed open the heavy door to the old biology lab. It was empty. Sunlight streamed through the high windows, illuminating dust motes. But the droning, it was coming from behind the large, leaded glass tank that once held preserved specimens. Clara peered inside. The tank was empty, but reflected in the glass, distorted and shimmering, was not her own face. It was the face of a young man, maybe her age when she'd been a student. He looked terrified. His mouth was open in a silent scream. The droning seemed to emanate from him. Clara stumbled back, heart hammering. Projection? Hallucination? She told herself it was the heat, the dust. But when she blinked, the face was gone. The droning faded. Yet, the cold spot beneath her hand where she'd touched the doorframe remained. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. The silence of her apartment, just blocks from the school, was broken by sounds that shouldn't be there. The faint scrape of chalk on a board, the distant slam of a locker, and whispers, not in English, but in a language that scraped against her nerves. Krk. Zzz. She found herself driving back to Blackwood High at 2 a.m., drawn by a compulsion she couldn't explain. The streetlights cast long skeletal shadows. The school loomed, dark and silent, except for a single lit window in the science wing. She parked haphazardly and crept towards the building. The front door, surprisingly, was unlocked. Inside, the silence was absolute. She moved through the empty halls, the whispers growing louder, circling her. He is here. She is near. The door must be closed. The words weren't spoken. They were felt, pressing into her mind. She found the biology lab. The light was still on. The leaded tank stood empty in the center of the room. But this time, reflected in its glass, wasn't a man's face. It was her own. Clara froze. Her reflection stared back, pale, wide-eyed. But behind her, in the reflection, stood the young man from earlier. He was reaching out, his hand pressing against the glass from the inside. The droning filled the room, a physical pressure. The whispers became a roar. Let him in. Let her feed. What? What is this? Clara whispered, her voice trembling. She backed away, but the reflection in the tank shifted. The young man's face pressed closer, his eyes wide with terror. His hand slammed against the glass. Crack. A hairline fracture spider-webbed across the surface, spreading rapidly. The droning intensified, vibrating the air. The cold spot beneath Clara's feet spread, freezing her bones. He is hungry, the voice echoed in her skull. Not the whispers, but a single, cold thought. The school is hungry. It needs the new blood. It needs the teacher. Clara turned to run, but the door to the lab was now sealed shut by a heavy iron lock she didn't remember. The fracture in the tank spread, reaching the edges. The young man's face was inches from her reflection. His mouth moved, forming words she couldn't hear, but she felt the meaning. Help me, please, before it's too late. No, Clara screamed, pounding on the locked door. The glass in the tank shattered, not with a crash, but with a wet, sucking pop. The young man's hand, cold and slimy, shot through the broken glass and clamped onto Clara's cheek. His fingers were like ice. His touch burned. Clara screamed again, a raw, animal sound. She tried to pull away, but his grip was iron. His face, distorted by the broken glass, filled her vision. His eyes weren't just terrified, they were empty. And in that emptiness she saw herself. Not her current self, but the girl she'd been 20 years ago. A girl with hopeful eyes, standing in this same lab. The girl who had vanished. You left the door open. The thought slammed into her mind. Not from the man-ghost, but from the school itself. You let the hunger in. You are part of it now. The young man's mouth, stretched in a silent scream, twisted into something else. Something hungry. His other hand shot out, grabbing Clara's wrist. The cold was seeping into her, replacing her blood with ice. The droning became a roar. The whispers, a chorus of 1,000 desperate voices. Teacher. The school's voice purred in her mind, smooth and ancient. You know the rules. You are the rules. The school never sleeps. It only learns, and it has learned your name. Clara's last thought, before the cold consumed her completely, wasn't of fear. It was of confusion. I never left. How? The iron lock on the door clicked open. The lab door swung inward. The droning softened, becoming a satisfied hum. The whispers faded, replaced by the sound of a single, clear voice. Clara's voice, young and bright, humming a childhood lullaby. It came from the shattered tank, where the young man's hands still reached out, now empty. The school had a new teacher, and the lessons had just begun. The end.